Many people believe that strength means speaking louder, arguing harder, or proving someone wrong. They think every insult deserves a response, every betrayal deserves a confrontation, and every manipulator deserves a warning. But life teaches a very different lesson. The people who truly control themselves rarely waste their energy trying to control others. They understand that not every battle deserves to be fought, because some battles only exist to drain your peace. The moment you stop reacting to every provocation is the moment you begin to see the game for what it really is. Manipulators survive on your attention. They feed on your emotions, your explanations, your frustration, and your need to be understood. They want you to defend yourself, because every defense keeps you trapped inside their story. The wiser path is often the quieter one. Instead of announcing your next move, you simply make it. Instead of warning people that you've changed, you allow your actions to reveal it. Silence is not weakness when it comes from discipline. It is one of the highest forms of self-mastery. There is a hidden power in becoming unpredictable. When people can no longer read your emotions, predict your reactions, or pull you into unnecessary conflicts, they begin to lose their influence over you. This is not about revenge. It is not about becoming cold or heartless. It is about refusing to hand over your inner peace to those who have not earned it. Every unnecessary argument avoided is energy preserved for your own growth. Today, we will explore 7 timeless rules that teach you how to outplay manipulation without becoming manipulative yourself. These principles will help you recognize emotional traps, strengthen your self-control, and move through life with quiet confidence instead of loud resistance. Because the greatest victory is not making someone else lose. The greatest victory is becoming someone who can no longer be controlled. One of the greatest mistakes people make when dealing with manipulation is believing they must immediately respond. The moment someone insults them, twists their words, questions their character, or attempts to provoke an emotional reaction, they feel compelled to defend themselves. This impulse seems natural because the human mind seeks fairness. It wants the truth to be recognized. It wants misunderstandings to be corrected. It wants justice to arrive as quickly as possible. Yet manipulators understand this instinct better than most people do. They know that if they can control your emotions, they can often control your decisions. They do not need to defeat you with superior arguments. They only need to keep you emotionally engaged. A person who has mastered emotional discipline begins to notice something different. Every conversation is not an invitation. Every accusation is not a question that deserves an answer. Every criticism is not a verdict that must be overturned. Some words are thrown into your path only to see whether you will stop walking. The manipulator is not always looking for agreement. They are looking for reaction. Your anger becomes their confirmation. Your lengthy explanations become their opportunity. Your frustration becomes their fuel. Consider how calm water reflects the sky with perfect clarity, while disturbed water reflects nothing clearly at all. The human mind works in much the same way. When emotions become turbulent, judgment becomes clouded, decisions become impulsive, small problems appear enormous. The manipulator understands that emotional chaos benefits them because a distracted mind is easier to influence than a peaceful one. They want your attention focused on proving yourself rather than improving yourself. Many people confuse silence with surrender. They imagine that remaining calm means allowing others to win. In reality, silence often requires greater strength than argument. Anyone can react instantly. Very few people can pause, observe, and decide whether a response is even necessary. The strongest person in the room is rarely the loudest. More often, it is the individual who cannot be emotionally pulled in every direction by the opinions of others. Manipulation often begins with something very small: a sarcastic comment, a dismissive laugh, a subtle insult disguised as humor, a carefully chosen phrase designed to make you question yourself. These moments appear insignificant, yet they are often tests. The manipulator is measuring your emotional habits. They are discovering what upsets you, what makes you defensive, what causes you to explain yourself endlessly. Every reaction provides them with valuable information. Imagine someone trying to start a fire. If there is no dry wood, no oxygen, and no fuel, the flame cannot survive. Emotional manipulation follows the same principle. Without your participation, the conflict slowly dies. The manipulator may become louder because silence frustrates those who depend on emotional control. They may accuse you of being cold, distant, arrogant, or uncaring. These labels are often attempts to lure you back into the emotional arena where they feel most comfortable. This does not mean becoming emotionally numb. Emotional intelligence is not the absence of feeling. It is the ability to choose which feelings deserve expression and which feelings deserve observation. You may notice anger rising within you, but you do not become the anger. You may feel disappointment, but you do not allow disappointment to dictate your next decision. You observe your emotions without allowing them to become your master. The disciplined mind understands that not every opinion deserves equal weight. A stranger's criticism carries different value than the advice of a trusted mentor. A manipulator's accusations are often reflections of their own intentions rather than accurate descriptions of yours. When someone constantly projects guilt, selfishness, or dishonesty onto others, they frequently reveal more about themselves than about the people they criticize. Learning this distinction protects your peace because you stop treating every accusation as evidence that something is wrong with you. One of the most powerful habits you can develop is delaying your response. Instead of answering immediately, you create space. That space may last a few seconds, a few minutes, or even several days depending on the situation. Within that pause, emotions begin to settle. Thoughts become clearer. You recognize that what seemed urgent often loses its urgency once emotion subsides. Manipulators dislike delays because delayed responses reduce emotional intensity. Without urgency, many of their tactics lose effectiveness. There is also wisdom in accepting that misunderstanding is sometimes unavoidable. Many people exhaust themselves trying to convince everyone that they are kind, honest, intelligent, or worthy. They spend years chasing approval from individuals who have already decided to misunderstand them. The quiet person recognizes that truth does not become stronger because it is repeatedly defended. Character reveals itself over time through consistent actions rather than endless explanations. Manipulators often create situations where you feel responsible for emotions that do not belong to you. They may suggest that their anger is your fault, their disappointment is your responsibility, or their happiness depends entirely upon your behavior. At first, this burden feels compassionate to carry, because caring people naturally wish to help others. Over time, however, it becomes a prison. You begin organizing your life around preventing someone else's emotional reactions. This is not kindness. It is emotional captivity disguised as responsibility. A balanced person understands the difference between compassion and control. You can care deeply about someone without allowing them to dictate your emotional state. You can listen without agreeing. You can understand without surrendering your judgment. You can remain respectful without sacrificing your boundaries. These distinctions protect your peace because they prevent empathy from becoming exploitation. When your emotions become steady, something remarkable happens. The manipulator loses their map. They no longer know which buttons to press because those buttons no longer produce predictable reactions. They may increase the pressure for a while, hoping the old version of you will return. They may try guilt instead of anger, charm instead of criticism, praise instead of insults. The methods change because the previous method stopped working. This transformation is not achieved through pretending to be calm while boiling with resentment inside. True emotional silence grows from understanding. You recognize that another person's behavior belongs to them. Their attempts to provoke you are choices they make. Your response remains a choice you make. Between those two choices exists your freedom. No manipulator can take that freedom unless you willingly surrender it through unconscious reaction. The practice requires patience because emotional habits formed over years do not disappear overnight. There will be moments when old patterns return. You may react too quickly. You may say more than necessary. You may spend hours replaying conversations in your mind, wishing you had responded differently. Rather than condemning yourself, treat each experience as training. Every encounter becomes another opportunity to strengthen awareness. Every pause becomes another victory over impulse. Every moment of restraint builds confidence that cannot be taken away by criticism, deception, or emotional games. Eventually, you discover that the greatest power was never hidden inside the perfect comeback, the clever argument, or the final word. It was hidden inside the quiet ability to remain unmoved while others desperately searched for a reaction they could no longer find. One of the quietest forms of strength is the ability to move without announcing your intentions. Most people feel an overwhelming urge to explain every decision they make. They tell others why they are changing, why they are leaving, why they are setting boundaries, and why they will no longer tolerate certain behavior. They believe that if they explain themselves clearly enough, everyone will understand. Yet those who seek to manipulate you are rarely confused by your words. They understand exactly what you are saying. Their goal is simply to keep you talking long enough to delay your actions. A manipulator benefits whenever your life becomes a discussion instead of a decision. They invite debates because debates consume time. They encourage explanations because explanations reveal your thoughts. Every sentence you offer becomes another piece of information they can use to predict your next move. While you are busy describing what you intend to do, they are already preparing ways to stop you. This is why quiet action is often more powerful than loud promises. Many people mistake announcements for progress. They declare that they are changing careers, improving their health, ending toxic relationships, or rebuilding their lives. The declaration itself provides a temporary feeling of accomplishment, even though nothing has actually changed yet. There is comfort in speaking because words create the illusion of movement. Real transformation, however, happens in silence. It happens in ordinary moments when no one is watching, applauding, or encouraging you. The strongest foundations are built long before anyone notices the building standing above the ground. Imagine a tree during the changing seasons. You do not hear it announcing that it will grow deeper roots before winter arrives. It simply does the work beneath the surface. By the time storms appear, the preparation has already been completed. Human growth follows the same principle. The most meaningful changes usually happen where they cannot be seen. Daily discipline, emotional healing, improved judgment, and strengthened character develop quietly over time until they become impossible to ignore. Manipulators dislike quiet people because silence removes their ability to interfere. When they do not know your plans, they cannot discourage them. When they do not know your weaknesses, they cannot exploit them. When they cannot predict your direction, they struggle to maintain influence. They often respond by asking endless questions, pretending curiosity, while searching for information that allows them to regain control. Not every question deserves a detailed answer. Privacy is not dishonesty. It is wisdom applied with restraint. There is an important difference between secrecy and discretion. Secrecy often comes from fear, while discretion comes from understanding. A discreet person simply recognizes that not every detail belongs in every conversation. They understand that timing matters. They know that unfinished work is fragile. Dreams exposed too early can become vulnerable to unnecessary criticism, doubt, and distraction. Protecting your goals during their early stages allows them to grow stronger before facing the opinions of others. Many people underestimate the influence of outside voices. Even well-meaning individuals can unintentionally weaken your resolve. They project their own fears onto your ambitions. They remind you of every risk while ignoring every possibility. A manipulator goes even further. They intentionally magnify uncertainty because uncertainty slows progress. They ask questions that sound reasonable but are designed to plant doubt. They say things like, "Are you sure you're ready?" Or "What if you fail?" Their purpose is not to help you think carefully. Their purpose is to make hesitation become your permanent habit. Kie action protects your confidence because confidence grows through evidence rather than discussion. Every completed task strengthens your belief in yourself. Every promise you keep to yourself becomes another reason to trust your own judgment. This inner trust cannot be borrowed from applause or compliments. It is earned through consistent action repeated over time. People who constantly seek external validation often become dependent on it. Those who quietly build their lives become anchored in something much stronger. Consider how water shapes stone. It does not argue with the rock. It does not announce its intentions. It simply continues flowing day after day. Over time, what once seemed impossible becomes inevitable. Quiet persistence possesses extraordinary power because it operates beyond emotion. It does not require motivation every morning. It depends upon commitment rather than excitement. Manipulators often rely on emotional highs and lows because emotional people are easier to redirect. Quiet consistency becomes difficult to manipulate because it remains focused regardless of temporary feelings. One of the greatest mistakes people make after recognizing manipulation is feeling obligated to confront it immediately. They prepare speeches, they gather evidence, they rehearse every point they intend to make. They believe exposing the manipulator will solve the problem. Sometimes confrontation is necessary, but many manipulators are highly skilled at turning confrontation into another opportunity. They deny, deflect, accuse, distort, and redirect until the original issue becomes buried beneath confusion. Hours are lost, energy is drained, peace disappears. There are moments when your greatest statement is simply changing your behavior without explanation. You answer fewer unnecessary messages. You stop participating in pointless arguments. You become less available for emotional games. You invest more time in your own growth than in managing someone else's expectations. At first, people may not notice. Then they become curious. Eventually, they realize that access to your attention is no longer guaranteed. This quiet shift often unsettles manipulators because they rely on predictable patterns. They expect immediate replies. They expect emotional reactions. They expect unlimited access to your thoughts and feelings. When those expectations disappear, they begin searching for ways to restore the old dynamic. They may become unusually kind. They may suddenly remember your importance. They may create artificial emergencies that require your immediate attention. They may even accuse you of changing as though growth itself were a betrayal. The disciplined person understands that growth always changes relationships. Some people celebrate your progress because they genuinely care about your well-being. Others resist your progress because your independence reduces their influence. Learning to distinguish between these responses protects you from unnecessary guilt. Not everyone who dislikes your boundaries deserves another explanation. Sometimes the discomfort they feel is simply the consequence of losing control they should never have possessed. There is also great strength in allowing results to speak on your behalf. Instead of telling people you have become wiser, demonstrate wisdom through your choices. Instead of announcing that you value your peace, quietly refuse invitations into needless conflict. Instead of declaring that you have changed, allow consistency to reveal the transformation over months and years. People often argue with words, but they struggle to argue with undeniable evidence. The temptation to explain yourself usually comes from the desire to be understood. This desire is deeply human. Everyone wants fairness. Everyone hopes others will recognize good intentions. Yet maturity teaches that complete understanding from everyone is neither possible nor necessary. Some people are committed to misunderstanding because misunderstanding serves their interests. They lose leverage when you stop trying to convince them. Moving quietly also creates space for observation. While others speak constantly about their plans, you notice their habits. While others compete for attention, you study patterns. You recognize who consistently keeps promises and who repeatedly breaks them. You discover who supports your growth and who subtly resists it. Observation becomes easier when your own need to constantly explain begins to fade. This does not mean becoming isolated or suspicious of everyone around you. Trusted relationships are built upon honesty, openness, and mutual respect. Wisdom lies in choosing carefully who deserves access to your inner world. Trust is earned through consistency, not granted automatically through familiarity. Some people have known you for years without truly valuing your well-being. Others may enter your life briefly, yet demonstrate remarkable loyalty and integrity. Time alone does not determine trust. Character does. As your actions become more intentional than your words, something remarkable begins to happen. Your confidence becomes quieter, your decisions become clearer, your energy is no longer scattered across endless conversations about what you hope to accomplish. Instead, it is invested directly into the work itself. Each day becomes less about convincing others of your direction and more about walking that path with steady determination. The need for approval gradually fades because your progress becomes its own confirmation and your life begins to reflect a discipline that no amount of manipulation can easily interrupt. The highest level of freedom is not reaching a place where no one ever tries to manipulate you. Such a place does not exist. Wherever there are people, there will always be those who seek influence through fear, guilt, deception, flattery, or emotional pressure. The true victory is becoming the kind of person who can no longer be easily controlled. When your mind is disciplined, your values are clear, and your emotions are steady, manipulation loses much of its power before it ever reaches you. You stop asking how to defeat manipulators and begin asking how to become someone beyond their reach. Many people spend years trying to identify every toxic personality they might encounter. They memorize warning signs, analyze conversations, and constantly search for hidden motives. While awareness is important, there is a greater form of protection. Instead of focusing all your energy on recognizing dangerous people, strengthen the qualities that make manipulation ineffective. A healthy tree does not survive every storm because the wind disappears. It survives because its roots are deep enough to withstand the pressure. One of those roots is self-respect. Manipulation often succeeds where self-respect is weak. A person who constantly doubts their worth becomes vulnerable to approval, criticism, and rejection. They begin making decisions based on how others might react instead of what they know to be right. They apologize for healthy boundaries. They seek permission to protect their peace. They confuse pleasing others with being a good person. Over time, they lose sight of their own values because they are constantly adjusting themselves to satisfy everyone around them. True self-respect is quiet. It does not require arrogance or superiority. It simply means recognizing that your peace has value, your time has value, your attention has value, your emotional energy has value. Once you understand this, you become much more careful about where you invest these precious resources. You no longer hand them to anyone who demands them. You begin asking whether a relationship deserves your effort rather than automatically assuming every relationship does. Manipulators often test people with small violations before attempting larger ones. They interrupt your boundaries in minor ways to see whether you notice. They borrow your time without appreciation. They dismiss your opinions. They pressure you into uncomfortable situations. If these small behaviors go unchallenged, they gradually become larger. The pattern is rarely sudden. It grows little by little until you find yourself trapped in a dynamic you never consciously agreed to. Someone who has become emotionally untouchable notices these patterns early. They do not ignore discomfort simply to avoid conflict. They pay attention when actions consistently contradict words. They understand that repeated behavior reveals character more accurately than repeated promises. Anyone can apologize, anyone can make excuses, anyone can speak beautifully about honesty, kindness, and loyalty. Consistent actions reveal whether those words carry genuine substance. There is tremendous freedom in accepting that not everyone belongs in every chapter of your life. Many people remain attached to unhealthy relationships because they fear loneliness more than dysfunction. They tolerate disrespect because they believe any connection is better than none. Yet unhealthy relationships often create a loneliness far greater than physical solitude. You can sit beside someone every day and still feel unseen, unheard, and emotionally exhausted. The disciplined mind understands that solitude and loneliness are not the same experience. Solitude creates space for reflection, healing, and growth. Loneliness often arises when you abandon yourself in pursuit of acceptance. Becoming comfortable with your own company removes one of the manipulator's greatest advantages. They can no longer threaten you with abandonment because you have already discovered peace within yourself. Another powerful form of protection comes from emotional independence. This does not mean becoming emotionally distant or refusing to love others. It means refusing to make your emotional stability dependent upon another person's behavior. If someone praises you today and criticizes you tomorrow, your identity remains steady. If someone approves of your choices or disapproves of them, your principles remain unchanged. External opinions may provide information, but they no longer determine your value. Many manipulators rely upon emotional inconsistency. One day, they offer affection, encouragement, and approval. The next day, they withdraw warmth, create distance, or become critical without explanation. This unpredictability creates confusion. The other person begins working harder to recover the approval they once received. They become trapped in an endless cycle of earning what should never have required earning in the first place. When your emotional foundation comes from within rather than from another person's approval, these cycles lose much of their influence. Learning to trust your own perception is equally important. Manipulation often begins by causing you to question your instincts. Someone repeatedly tells you that you are imagining things, overreacting, remembering incorrectly, or being too sensitive. Eventually, you stop trusting your own judgment. You begin relying on the manipulator to explain your own experiences. This creates dangerous dependence because your inner compass slowly disappears beneath someone else's version of reality. Rebuilding trust in yourself requires patience. It begins with paying attention to patterns instead of isolated moments. A single misunderstanding may simply be human error. Repeated dishonesty becomes a pattern. A single broken promise may have an understandable explanation. Endless broken promises become a habit. Instead of ignoring your observations because someone offers convincing excuses, you allow consistent evidence to shape your conclusions. Becoming untouchable also requires letting go of the desire to rescue everyone. Compassion is a beautiful quality, but compassion without wisdom becomes self-destruction. Some people repeatedly create chaos and then expect others to solve it. They refuse responsibility while demanding endless understanding. They mistake kindness for unlimited access. If you constantly sacrifice your own well-being to save those who refuse to save themselves, you eventually lose the strength needed to care for anyone, including yourself. Healthy compassion includes boundaries. It recognizes that supporting someone does not mean carrying responsibilities they refuse to carry. You can offer guidance without taking ownership of another person's choices. You can forgive without rebuilding broken trust immediately. You can wish someone well while recognizing that distance is necessary for your own peace. Discipline also protects you from manipulation in ways that are often overlooked. A disciplined person manages their finances carefully, making them less vulnerable to financial pressure. They manage their time intentionally, making them less vulnerable to constant interruptions. They care for their health, making them stronger physically and mentally. They continue learning, making them more difficult to deceive. Every area of disciplined living reduces dependence upon people who might otherwise exploit weakness. There is remarkable strength in becoming less reactive to temporary emotions. Fear, excitement, guilt, and anger all narrow perception when left unchecked. Manipulators frequently create urgency because urgency discourages thoughtful reflection. They pressure you to decide immediately, forgive instantly, lend money quickly, or commit before you have time to think clearly. The emotionally grounded person understands that genuine opportunities usually survive careful consideration. Pressure often benefits the person creating it far more than the person receiving it. Patience becomes one of your greatest defenses. Instead of rushing toward every invitation, you observe. Instead of believing every flattering word, you wait. Instead of making important decisions during emotional highs or lows, you allow your mind to become calm before choosing a direction. Time reveals intentions that hurried conversations often conceal. As these habits become part of your daily life, people begin responding to you differently. Those who genuinely respect others appreciate your clarity, your consistency, and your calm presence. Those who seek control often become frustrated because the usual tactics no longer succeed. They discover that guilt no longer changes your decisions. Fear no longer dictates your actions. Praise no longer blinds your judgment. Criticism no longer shakes your identity. You become increasingly difficult to influence through emotional games because your decisions are guided by principles rather than impulses, by wisdom rather than pressure, and by a quiet inner strength that cannot be purchased, threatened, or manipulated away.